I'm going to be recording this as well. So tell me about what we have on the screen here, Anna. Okay, that
So
explains that. Yeah, so much for the name hiding. Taylor Swift, iOS, and the Access economy. Why the normal distribution is vanishing. So, what prompted you to send this to me, and what are they talking about?
um okay, so like business school 101. Um you tell students you have an arbitrary object X, and then you ask all of them to write down in secret what they would pay for X. And then you tabulate all of the responses, and if they're like integer um, integers or integer intervals, you basically map them on and you form a bell curve. You form a normal distribution. Like there's a big one flat middle and little bit of tails on either side. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
that's the classic business pricing model 101. The idea here is that we have stopped living in a time where that makes sense. Like for example, recently there was this YouTube celebrity. I'm forgetting his name. Some makeup guy that I watched, James Charles. Yeah, that's the guy. So this makeup dude decided to go on tour, and he has a lot of prepubescent fans and like tweens, teenagers, a lot of really young kids who love this guy. And he was selling some tickets, like VIP access and stuff, for like $500. And it was clear that these tickets were going to get sold out, and a lot of people were against that. But it's another example of this. Like, if you see the classical ticket sales model, you would expect that the vast majority of sales would come from the big fat middle, and the vast majority of the audience would pay that much. This article hypothesizes that there are actually now, we have bifurcated into this point where people either really care about X or they don't, right? Um, so you have people who were either super fans of James Charles, given all things equal, and they would, no matter what would happen, they would pay for it, and there are all these other people who don't give a shit. So in that model, these kinds of pricing dynamics start making sense. The idea is that normal distributions usually arise when there are like tons of little variables and tons of things interacting in the background. When when you are living in an age of scarcity and you have scarce resources, you have to optimize not just for one variable but for several. Like, is it within a budget? What happens if I buy this? Is an opportunity cost to this? Blah 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 blah. But once you achieve abundance, you can go like, fuck it, I don't care about anything else. Do I want this or not? So he says that we are achieving this at a global level, and which is why we're seeing some of the phenomena that we're seeing. That's in the article.
So I'm looking at some of these things where it says demand and quality slash price, and the demand is really low for good enough Android, really
Yeah,
high for flagship Android.
it's more like it's a bifurcated demand. Like most people would don't give a shit about what phone they buy, so they'll buy the cheapest one available, which is good enough for them. And some people really care about the phone that they buy, so they're willing to spend $2,000 on a fucking phone. You
But
know?
what I don't understand is that you said a lot of people seem to be okay with buying the cheapest, and a lot of people seem to be okay with buying the flagship. But the demand seems to be much lower here in the good enough Android picture than it is for flagship Android.
I think his drawing is really messed up, but his drawing is this idea that you have those two equally big areas, two equally big groups of people or whatever, and people tend to fall in either category. He should have actually drawn this as a bimodal distribution instead. Like the idea is that there isn't a big middle anymore, right? Same thing as income inequality. You're either extremely hyper rich or on the way to being there, or you are poor. Like the middle is hollowing out, you know?
So yeah, it's interesting, and you see that with cars as well. Like either people have the cheapest piece of crap, or they have some expensive sports car luxury nonsense.
Yeah,
So you see,
yeah.
world of scarcity, world of abundance. So what about the world of abundance makes you get rid of the middle?
Here's I feel like what people don't understand is how we're getting to abundance. Um, we've arrived at abundance in music and content, right? James Charles exists because of abundance in content. How did we get that? How did we get from here to the point where we have enough abundance in content that some random kid from the middle of nowhere can upload a bunch of videos and turn into this mega sensation? Uh, how does that happen? It happens because the cost of distribution has dropped to zero, right? And that happened because of automation. Whenever there was physical media, something being stamped, vinyl being stamped, cassettes being recorded, CDs being burned, something was being spread around. There were multiple gatekeepers, and the cost of distribution was high enough that you had scarcity and the economics associated with scarcity. The issue over here is that as soon as you hit abundance, you hit abundance in every form. The price drops so rapidly because of automation that you hollow out a lot of jobs along the way. The record business just isn't that big anymore, but it's extremely profitable. Like, I've told you this so many times, like, this is my pet peeve. People act like Spotify is this big disruptive force when it's actually large chunks of it are owned by the labels, you know? So a few people at the labels got really rich off of Spotify, and the artists didn't get much. Same thing over and over again. Abundance happens through automation. Automation happens through disintermediation. Whenever you start cutting out the middle, whenever you start automating stuff, whenever you start reducing the distribution costs of anything, people get cut out of it. Jobs get lost. You know, like if tomorrow I could create a doctor that goes into your pocket, it means two things. First of all, this huge middle class job that's been like this, you should always marry a doctor kind of thing, is going to go by the wayside. It's going to go the way of the dodo. And second, it would mean that every single person on earth would have a doctor. Because as long as you would have a smartphone, which is pretty cheap now, you would have access to a doctor. So at the same time, we would make healthcare abundant, but we would hollow out this huge demographic that's earning pretty well. We would hollow out nurses, we would hollow out doctors, we would hollow out HMOs, we would hollow out these administrative staff, we would hollow out people who deliver medicines, we'll hollow out all of these people in the offices
This
who take
reminds me of
care
an
of
interesting
it.
quote that I heard from Eli the computer guy, which is when people would say that he was being an asshole when he would discuss technology, they would criticize him for discussing money and technology. They would criticize him for anything he said that seemed kind of assholey or mean, but that was the truth of the way the world is. He would say that if you work in technology, by definition, your job is to be an asshole, because what you're doing, if you're doing your job right, somebody else is losing theirs. If you're setting up a phone system, you don't have a bunch of secretaries like in Mad Men that are plugging the quarter-inch jacks to transfer people manually. If you set up an IVR, that's a bunch of people that are out of the job answering a phone. If you set up some
Yes.
sort of sensors that are on the cows so that you can tell their health, that's one less. You can fire the 5 people whose job it used to be to check up on the health of your livestock, because you have these little Internet of Things sensors everywhere. That
Yes.
if you are a technology professional, by definition, you are an asshole. Even myself, if I fix a bunch of devices that are broken, now a bunch of people in China that would have made their $2 a day making new ones, or the executives at Apple that would be making money off of new stuff, are not making money off of new stuff because I've taken old stuff and I've repurposed that for somebody else to use. At some point, being
Yes.
a technology professional makes you an asshole.
Um, I disagree in the sense that it's true at a surface level, but I would like to make it not true. Um, so I've been on a sci-fi kick lately, and I love this series of novels called The Culture. And the idea behind it is that it's a post-scarcity, abundance-based civilization that's a melding of artificial intelligences and human beings who have been essentially uh, I, programmed is a weird word to say, but augmented to the nth degree so that they can thrive in this environment of plenty. They have like trillions of citizens, and essentially they've reached a point where they realize that there's enough matter in the stars for them to do anything and prosper in any way that they want. I would like to believe that technology's end goal is to achieve something like this, and that's actually achievable, given that the technology that we have right now, then compared to like you know being the asshole who takes away jobs. Because think about it this way: um, today, a homeless person in New York owns more shirts than most nobles in the court of Louis the 15th. It's true.
They may have more
If you
shirts,
go,
but the overall quality of life thing is the thing that's missing. Because when you say that, I'm not saying you mean to do this, but it just sounds like that Heritage Foundation argument of, well, everybody, even if you're poor, you have cable TV and you have a microwave and X, Y, and Z, but it doesn't necessarily add up to you having a better life than you would if you were middle class 40 years ago. It just means you're a broke person with all the stress of being a broke person, but you have a microwave and a television.
that's true. But
I'll take being a
at
noble
some
in the
level,
14th century over being homeless in New York City any day.
I don't think that's a good idea. Because, first of all, if you're noble in the 14th century, you get a cut. You might die from it, quite literally. You
Yeah,
know?
but I wouldn't have a
Uh,
bafang in the
you,
14th century, so I'd be good. I wouldn't get any cuts.
nobles in the 14th century tended to die from all kinds of shit, man. They used to do duels. They used to fight with each other over crazy shit because they didn't have anything else to do. They used to live really nasty, violent, and short lives. Cholera was a real thing. Uh, there was disease, pus, sores, all of that everywhere. A healthy, you get a cavity, you're fucked. You know,
I
a
have
lot
never
of
gotten a
people actually.
cavity.
Oh
Then again, that's probably
well,
because of toothpaste and all that stuff. Uh,
I mean, that might actually not be true. That's another thing, by the way. Funnily enough, we don't know which parts of modern dentistry are actually valid and not. What seems to be evidence-based is like brushing and shit. We know that works. Brushing with fluoride toothpaste works. Fluoride is the shit. It's the bomb. But other than that, there are like tons of people who maintain excellent dental hygiene and have tons of cavities, and tons of people who eat like shit and they don't brush their teeth who have perfect. So genetics is a big part of it as well. So we won a genetic lottery. I don't have cavities as well. Uh, yeah, I mean, if you don't win a genetic lottery and you get a cavity back then, you're fucked. Lots of people die from all kinds of crazy stuff. You wouldn't know if you got cancer.
so,
Women were more
yeah.
likely to die during childbirth.
So
If
what's
I had a
interesting
baby back then,
about this is
yeah,
when you talk about how healthcare has gotten so much better if everybody can have a doctor just from an app on their phone, how so many people's lives are being improved while at the same time you have all these large groups of jobs that are going away. How do you
yes,
bridge the gap here between everybody being able to have everything cheaply but simultaneously, because the thing is if everybody can have everything slightly cheaper due to abundance, but then you also have people that have nothing because what created that abundance also destroyed their job. How do you bridge that so that during that gap, people are not completely fucked? Because I maybe, if somebody comes out with an artificial intelligence little device at Staples that just automatically fixes your board, hundreds of thousands of people get way cheaper repairs. But if I make $0, then where am I at in that? How do you kind of bridge that gap for the people whose jobs are being completely removed from the ecosystem, whose skill set is becoming completely irrelevant as a result of that abundance being created?
that's how. That's why they say that capitalism eats itself. Like, I'm actually for capitalism. I'm actually for what it has done and what it means. But capitalism requires consumers to survive, right? And at the same time, capitalism is also this evolutionary algorithm that keeps on searching for producing the best goods at the lowest possible cost. So that means capitalism, by its very nature, is predisposed to stuff like automation and slavery. Slavery at the worst, automation in the best case, right? Um, so if we automate away the vast majority of jobs, then that creates a crisis because suddenly it creates a market that doesn't really exist. You know, it decimates the consumer base. Uh, the prosperity of the United States is actually built upon this idea. There will always be an X amount of consumers, an X sized market, which will be willing to buy Y amount of goods. The second, that doesn't hold true. And some people have actually said that beyond the obvious fraud and shit had happened in 2008, one of the underlying reasons why 2008 was so bad was that the prosperity models assumed that we would have prosperity levels of this much and this much, and it didn't end up being true. We were less prosperous than what we should have been, and that's why it bit us so badly. So the models were off kilter. Um, Plus that and the fraud. So
That the fraud and the attempts to the government's wink wink nudge nudge. Can you give as many people a loan as humanly possible? And it was the wink wink nudge nudge was the if this turns out badly, we'll cover you. And then once that wink wink nod nod got there, then a bunch of people said, huh, they'll cover us if we do some fraudulent shit. Let's just not give loans that people can't possibly pay back, but come up with all sorts of crazy, funky models so that we can get rich
yep,
and somebody else can pay for it. And so that,
yep.
and it started. I
Same thing.
think all of these things started from a good place. It was, people, minorities were treated like shit in the country in the past. Let's figure out a way to get people into homes
But
and get rid of this shit. And then greedy assholes kind of.
yes, but do you know the magical thing about the recovery? The recovery showed that what doesn't matter isn't actually like the principles of the system aren't quite what we think they are. What matters is that the money keeps flowing. It keeps getting passed from one person to another, one person to another, one person to another, and it keeps spurring activity, no matter what or how that money is derived. Right? Money isn't exactly real. It's a fiction that we create and that we reinforce with an idea that money reflects the amount of wealth being created in the world, right? Money is supposed to be a proxy for that. It is not equal to it, it is a proxy for it. So, in a very real way, wealth is only created when people, two or three people, come together and they sort of exchange stuff. Wealth requires resources to be transferred. Wealth requires expertise to be shared. Wealth requires you to hire someone else's services to do X, Y, and Z, to buy that software, blah, blah, blah. The great pyramid of wealth requires that. The crash showed that as long as the money kept flowing, as long as the money was there, it didn't really matter how fucked the fundamentals were, as long as the loop kept going, as long as the people kept getting paid and the cycle continued. So that raises a big question. What happens when we cut off most of the parts of the cycle? Can we still keep these artificial means up? Because at that point, money essentially becomes a big fiction. It becomes a nudge, nudge, wink, wink lie. And it's yeah.
I also kind of wonder if, as all these technologies come into play in the future, one of the things I wonder about is is the concept of individuals having jobs and doing work going to become obsolete, or are we simply just going to come up with new, ridiculous, crazy forms of work that we never would have imagined before? So there are people that argue that even if artificial intelligence becomes a thing, we've always had advances in technology. At one point in America, everybody was doing farming, and then we got rid of that. Everybody was doing some sort of construction, and then we got rid of that. But at the same time, the entire point of artificial intelligence and robotics is not to add to technology. It's not that the horse and buggy is being replaced with the car. It's that the human being is the horse and buggy, and we're being replaced with something else, which is
yes. That's actually like a big fallacy that I keep getting really, really annoyed with.
Is the fallacy the
because,
idea that which one is the fallacy? I'm sorry, just to clarify.
The fallacy that they'll keep on that tech will keep on adding new jobs, that will keep on coming up in new jobs, etc., etc., etc. Really large segments of the U.S. population are unemployable. It's not that they can't go and find a job; it's that there are no jobs that exist for them. It's just not possible for them to ever have a job.
Can you give me 1 second to get my couple?
Rate is at the lowest
Hello?
it has ever been.
Can you give me 1 second to get a water, and also just tell me what it is you mean by that when you said a large section of is not employable? 1 sec. I should have got my cup of water before I started. Be right back.
Yeah.
I have my cup of water situated right on top of my mic preamp audio interface like a professional. Let's get back in my chair here. I'm a professional. There's ain't no water damage here. Okay. All right, so when you said a good portion of America is unemployable, do you mean that's because there's not enough jobs? Do you mean that a large portion of
Okay.
America's population is
Like,
just not skilled at all in anything that's relevant, or what are we getting at here? Also, are you still there? There you are.
yes, I am. Yes, I am. Yes, I am. Okay, so what I'm saying is there are about 95 million people right now in the United States who are missing, quote unquote, uh, who traditionally have had jobs, but they aren't participating in the workforce anymore. The unemployment rate as it stands measures workers. Like, there are actually 6 different measures of unemployment. So the most quoted one actually measures workers who were looking for jobs in the past 2 weeks or some X number and found them and blah blah blah. Work is still engaged in the workforce. There are actually there's a huge fraction of people, a huge chunk of people who uh, who just there aren't any jobs for them. Like, I'm talking about these ex coal miners after the coal mine shut down. The coal mine got automated, and suddenly you just need 2 or 3 people to clear off an entire mountain. You know, and what happens to these people? Nothing. They just get left behind.
So when you
They
say
end up
missing,
on
do you mean that
disability.
we no
They
longer
end up
consider
on
people as part
some
of the
some
unemployment rate if they've given up looking for a job?
social security if they're really lucky. They end up scrounging, and it's yeah, that's 95 million people are out of the workforce that who would have otherwise in like prior decades have been engaged. That's huge, you know.
So how do you fix that? Still there? You've returned. Still there?
Yeah, I'm still here.
Okay, so you said. So how do you have higher employment numbers, but an unemployment rate that's still, or this many people out of the labor force? Is that with that little trick where you stop counting people as unemployed if they've stopped looking for work? What is the
Yes,
statistical trick by which you get away with that?
yes. That's exactly the trick. You stop counting them if they've stopped looking for work.
How do you know if somebody has stopped looking for work? So if I'm on the job hunt
So
and then
when
I
you
come home one
come
day and I just
close,
say, fuck it, I give up, nobody's going to hire me,
uh,
how does the government know to classify me one way or the other at that point?
so the Bureau of Labor Statistics has multiple data sources, including like local unemployment bureaus. They get so you have this unemployment insurance, etc. You have you can collect the unemployment. What's the benefit you get after you get unemployed? You get fired or something. For a few months, you get a benefit, right? So you can check it via different state benefits, different federal benefits. You can check it via people applying for disability. You can check it via all of these different things that these economists basically stack together and turn it into that. Do you know what would be the greatest heist of all time?
Tell me.
Stealing the job report before it comes out. You know,
So
you
here's
can
another
move
question I have for
markets.
you. I'm probably missing
Yeah.
something stupid because it's 4 in the morning. 4:20
Mm.
actually, so very unlucky number for this paying attention. So, for the job number to go up, saying more people have jobs, for him to lower the unemployment percentage while simultaneously having the same number of unemployed people, the only thing that comes out mathematically in my head is that all these new jobs are essentially new people coming to the country to take those jobs immediately. Because you cannot have the
No,
same amount of unemployed people in the country, but have unemployment have the same amount of unemployed people and have more. I'm a little confused. What am I missing
no.
there?
These jobs are basically high skilled jobs. There are very, very, very few low skilled jobs left. Low skilled jobs are going away that Americans are willing to do, uh, are going away faster than you would expect. Um, these new jobs that get added are essentially in urban areas or in smaller pockets like that. They are in technology, they are in regions around it, they are in service industries, etc. They aren't out there in the heartland. So it can be true that the heartlands are dying. At the same time, can also be true that these new jobs are being added in the cities. New York City is still growing at an unprecedented rate. Uh, New York City is still adding jobs at a crazy rate. So is San Francisco. Um, Look at the amount of construction going on. A construction worker in New York and SF right now has a bevy of options.
I guess,
They
but
are
here's maybe I phrased my question wrong. How is it that the unemployment number can be the same, but there can be more people working at the same time unless the population of the country is going up linearly along with the amount of people employed?
um, people get added to the workforce every year, right? Young people. We are currently in the middle of a demographic bulge. The millennials are the second biggest demographic to come out since my generation. Your generation is the second biggest demographic to come out since the boomers. So they're getting added to the workforce every year as well. People who are being subtracted are usually from jobs like coal mining, etc. So those people, I think the best way to look at it would be like geographically. I bet if you can map this data on like geographical clusters, you'll see what I mean. In places where new jobs are being added and there aren't enough people to fill them, they're either cities or these major economic centers, and most of these jobs are either going to slightly older retirees like the AARP and McDonald's tying up, or millennials. You know, young people snapping up jobs as they come into mature and come into the workforce. Whereas the heartland, most of these people have been passed over. They don't really have resources to move out, to uproot themselves and
So,
go to
is there
these
an
cities.
is this more of an age element or a geographic element? So, would you say this is something where it's mostly
Geographic.
so even young people who are living in the sticks are unemployable, whereas the people that are in the city areas or the coastal areas
Yes.
are, regardless of age, are experiencing an abundance
Yes.
of jobs.
Yes. Um, I, I can't do it because I'm in mobile, but if
Yes, you can,
I
Siri.
bet you, oh, okay, come on. I bet you if you pull up a map of unemployment by county, you will see this huge difference. Like rural America versus urban America. There's a reason why people went for Donald Trump. I know a lot of people go like, oh, economic anxiety is just a code for racism and shit. But it's also real phenomena, you know?
I think he spoke to
People,
people that were not getting spoke to. Now, granted, he may have not actually done what he fucking expected them to do, but there's a large group of people that were just sick and tired of being told, "Fuck you, coal
exactly.
miner. Fuck you, lumberjack. Whatever the hell." Okay, I'm looking for a graph, but I found something that looks like, yeah, that's. I'm not doing that at 4 in the morning. Show me a sexy
One
graph.
second.
Here we go.
Map
Siri is going to find it faster than me. I know it. Here we go. I think I beat Siri. Unemployment rates by county.
Yes.
Bada bing. Okay, this is not what I was expecting at all. So it looks like there's higher unemployment in the West Coast city, and there's way higher West Coast cities like a lot of California, a lot of Nevada, Oregon area, and there's actually lower unemployment percentage in the sticks in the Wisconsin area, and the middle thingy that's between Wyoming and I really failed geography. I don't know what half of this shit is, but the middle stuff where you would expect the Hicks to be is less.
The Greater Lakes, the Greater Northwest, Michigan, in that area.
Yeah, I'm surprised because I would expect California to have, or these hipster places with all the tech jobs and all that shit, to have a lower unemployment rate, not higher than the Midwest.
Wow.
So this is very strange. I'm going to send you a link to what I'm looking at.
Which unemployment rate are you looking at?
I am going to show you. I'm probably being a nub. Let me just, I'm going to send you it in a message.
Oh, come on. You want a nub, Louis?
I am not a Siri. I am not Siri.
Don't say that.
I am.
That's not true.
Well, it better not be true. I'm not going to be a Siri. I'll be a Google Assistant, maybe. No, I don't want to be a Google Assistant. I don't want to be either of them, but... Yeah, so I just sent you a link to the one that I'm looking at here. And it's really surprising. And Texas has ridiculous amounts of unemployment. I was not expecting this at all. Texas seems to have it the worst.
Oh. That is weird. 1 second. Labor workforce participation rate by county. Participation rate map.
Somebody asked if she's Swedish. No, she was born in Arkansas. Yeah, but this graph is not what I was expecting. Would it be what you were expecting?
No, it's actually really counterintuitive, and that's fascinating. We learned something new.
Yeah, but I mean, what the fuck is wrong with Texas?
I mean, Texas.
Does CSAT Solutions need to open another office there?
If you see the graph, right? If you see what it looks like, it appears that the unemployed areas are rural areas in these states. 1 second. U6. U6. I wish I was at home with my gigabit internet.
Rub it in.
God damn it.
Rub it in. You live in fucking India and you have faster internet than I do in Manhattan for $480 a month. That is bullshit. That is absolute bullshit.
I have a direct fiber line.
I pay $480 a month for Time Warner, and then I have to load balance that with T-Mobile LTE that's limited to 18 fucking gigabytes a month. Just, thank you very much to Marius, who donated $5. That's very kind of you.
I get 3 terabytes.
Makes me sick. India does not even have fucking plumbing for toilets to the same level as the United States, and you have better internet.
India is actually, weirdly enough, one of those countries that are, like, when I first moved there, right?
If we simply ran Cat 6 cable along the fucking sewage, we would have better internet than India. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm raging.
Actually, it's more complicated than that.
I'm sure it is. I'm just raging because I'm jealous. And you're talking about your gigabit.
But when I first moved there, right? It's like India is distinctly like this upper class. Like 1 to 10 million people have the purchasing power of middle class Americans, and then a few 100,000 families or so have the purchasing power of really expensive Upper East Side style New Yorkers, like old money, really fucking wealthy neighborhoods with Lamborghini showrooms in them, and people driving fucking Maseratis, you know. And outside these little areas, you have these places of unbelievable poverty. So it's like there's an entire economy, like a microeconomy, like a microclimate kind of thing, dedicated to these people and their needs. You know,
I
large
actually just
corporations.
realized that I was pointing to Arizona while I was saying that was Texas. This is going to come back to haunt me when I run for election 3 years from now. At 4:30 in the morning, Lewis was looking at a map and mistook Arizona for Texas. That's not to say that Texas doesn't still
How
have
the,
some shit. It's got
okay,
a
okay,
gray
okay, okay.
cluster over here.
How the hell can you mistake Texas? I
I
mean,
got a
seriously.
50. I got in 8th grade, after 2.5 years of taking geography, I got a 58 on my geography course. I'm not good at blind memorization. Like I can understand why PP3V42 has to come before PP Bus G3 Hot. I get the knowledge. I get the logic of it. There's no logic to on a map. This one is called Texas. That one's called Colorado. That's just pure
Okay,
memorization, and
okay.
my brain just sucks
I,
at it. But yeah, I just call. That's
okay,
just an excuse for calling Arizona Texas on a live stream. I'm never
okay.
gonna live that
Look,
one down.
here's here's how I visualize it. Basically, um, Florida is America's weird dick. You know, it's like this bizarre dick that's hanging off of the U.S.
And it's peeing if
Um,
you look at this map. Actually,
yeah, yeah,
look at it.
yeah. Um, Alabama is just behind it. It's like the sirloin, you know. Mississippi is to the left of that. Arkansas is above. Louisiana is below. By the way, do you know why Arkansas is not called Arkansas? It's called Arkansas.
It
Which
sounds
is
cooler.
no, it's because it was actually started by the French. It's so fucked up. The naming of places in the United States, very few people realize it, is actually based upon the original settlers that were there. So, like back in the day, there was a super racist standard, like the first white kid to be born. You know, a place was called settled or civilized as soon as the first white child was born over there, right? Um, so, depending upon what culture or what nationality that white child was from, that it determined how these places were named.
Nebraska
Because
has
that was
really
the
low unemployment. Did you look at this?
yeah.
What is Nebraska doing correct?
I have no idea. I need to go back home and check it. And I need to do a deep dive. It's something I need to learn more about. Yeah, but basically, that Texas is sort of like stolen territory that we got from Mexico. You know that, right?
Didn't they try to fight for their independence from Mexico once and fail or something, or tried to before we went in there? I forget the history of it.
Yes.
So they
Yes.
fought for their
Yes.
independence once, and and then we, like, after they got their independence, came there and said, okay, now.
You're part of the threat US of A. Congratulations. So yeah, so Texas is like joined at the hip to Mexico. That's how I remember it. New Mexico is basically next to Texas. It was Mexico, then they named it New Mexico, and Arizona is to the left of that, and then finally California. Yeah, I, you know, it's so weird that I can name all 50 states.
Tennessee's unemployment rate also surprises me as well. How the hell does Tennessee have less unemployment than Arizona?
I really need to look into the
What
statistics.
the
Are
fuck
they
is wrong with Arizona and New Mexico? Also,
Arizona,
the
New
map that
Mexico?
I'm looking at, I don't think that's where Alaska and Hawaii are located. I don't know if you're looking at what I'm looking at, but I'm pretty sure that's not where Alaska goes. This map is this is a bullshit map. I'm gonna look at another one. I don't even trust that this is Texas at this point from this fucking piece of shit map. There's got to be
They do that for a reason.
one that's trustworthy.
Do you know, like, Alaska is so big that if they actually do it to scale, it would dwarf most of the US? Alaska is really fucking big, man. As is Hawaii. Maps are funny. Projections are funny. Anyone in chat have any suggestions? Because I'm gonna go home and get to the bottom of that.
This is actually one of the worst stream live chats that I've ever had. This like
you.
I have banned so many people. It's ridiculous. It's like I'm reading this, and as a conservative, I just want to throw up in my mouth.
Why?
Just if you read half of the banned messages, you'd understand.
Oh my god. Okay. See them out loud.
Don't open the
It's
chat.
more
Em.
entertaining.
Don't open
No,
the chat.
Em. It's more entertaining that way. Come on, just say it out loud.
They're already gone, Em. They're already gone. They've been deleted.
Doesn't fucking matter. It's
They've been deleted. They're gone.
People who rage shit.
Okay, here's a question for you before I head off. Does Australia exist? Because I've always argued that it doesn't, and that Australia is a fictional creation by NASA so that they can continue getting government funding by claiming the Earth is round. Let's see how many people believe me. And I also, after trying out Paul Daniels' software and hearing him tell me that he's from Australia, it almost kind of makes me hope that it doesn't actually exist.
Big Globe is out there to get you. Big Globe is gonna get you.
So the Earth is round, isn't it?
No,
you know, one of Jessa Jones's primary mentors that got her into iPhone board repair and made her think it was possible and that she could learn it is a serious flat earther.
Okay, so I actually never understood the flat earth belief system, because isn't it really easy to falsify and you can do it yourself?
Okay, if you want to say that NASA is making up bullshit in order to get money from the government for not really do much, that's great. You're a little out there, but I get your conspiracy theory. If you're saying that, there's a lot you could say, but like just get you can look through a telescope, man. Like look through a fucking telescope for 20 seconds, and you.
Well, actually,
really?
I've been thinking about this. You know, it's as easy as putting down a lipid drop, or putting down a drop in like a oil suspension kind of thing. If you see, everything forms a sphere. Why does stuff form a sphere? Why do bubbles, etc., end up forming spheres? And when you put oil into water or water into oil, the droplets in the middle, especially if they're suspended in the middle, will form a sphere. Why? Because that's the best shape in which the forces equal out. You can see that over and over and over again in nature. So, in a way, wouldn't it be more rational? Like if you think that everything is flat, that you would keep seeing the flat stuff again and again, because then that's how nature's forces would act. Because if you really think about it, whenever you have different media interacting or you see different forces acting on stuff.
Hi says that a telescope is round, which is why it's skewing your perspective to believe the things you see through it is round.
And by the way, do you know, have I ever told you about the story of Eratosthenes?
No. This will have to be the last one before I resign myself to sleeping.
This guy in ancient Greece, he figured out the exact curvature of the Earth by basically doing some really simple trigonometry and going like, okay, on one day of the year, there's a shadow. There's a shadow at this part in this city, and in this city, there's the sun shines straight down into the well. So what he did was he put a stick on the ground, and he put a stick over there, and on that day of the year, he measured the length of the shadow of the stick that was on the first city. And then he hired someone to pace the distance between the two, and then he basically figured out the angle between the two cities on the Earth, and then he figured out what the circumference of the Earth was from that. People were really fucking clever back then. You know? Like, no one really believed that the Earth was flat for like thousands and thousands of years, other than, uneducated idiots.
When did the Earth become... So are you saying that people thought the Earth was round, then people came up with the bullshit that the Earth is flat, then we undid that and went back to people thinking the world is round?
No, it's more like uneducated idiots thought, like, they were, like, education wasn't this uniformly distributed. Educated people back then thought the Earth was a sphere. They were experimenting with robotics, hydraulics, etc. Ancient, in the Library of Alexandria, we have evidence of people playing around with steam engines, like with mini toy steam engines. They just never really employed them.
Didn't the
But
Library of
most people,
Alexandria get burned down and most of the books get destroyed?
yes, but we still have evidence. We still have some stuff. But most people at the time were uneducated, so they thought whatever. So they thought whatever they believed in bizarre shit, and they thought that the earth was flat and was like beset by God, and it was in the interest of the ruling class to keep it that way. So you had these hyper-educated noble people who knew the truth, and you had these vast, unwashed, uneducated masses who believed whatever the fuck they believed. And that just kept happening and continuing until uh, until later on, like Galileo came around. Galileo actually ended up fighting because he claimed that the Earth was in the center of the universe, and even though the church believed him, they didn't want the unwashed masses to believe him because they didn't want them to it would actually fuck up their own position in the universe because as long as the earth was the center and they were the center of the heavens and there was a vault of heavens, the church controlled the access. So basically, it was better and more profitable for the nobles to let people believe this kind of shit that if you wander too far from this city, you will fall off the earth. You know, what better way is it to control people and to keep them in place when you're a tyrant? You know.
That's interesting.
And yeah, that's my belief. There's a reason why we didn't have public education before it was necessary to have public education. It is always more profitable to roll over idiots than it is to roll over smart people. I mean, that's how most parents see it. That's
You'll
how
have
most people see it.
We'll have to have another discussion on that later about the lovely New
Yeah.
York public education system.
Oh,
Okay,
yes.
so
Oh, yes.
let's. I will cut this one short because I have to go to sleep, and
Mhm.
I also have to go to sleep and plan on how to cut all the fiber going to your house. So that
Mhm.
I'm jealous. I'm gonna find a way to do it without having to make a trip to India.
I wish you luck. I wish you luck from the bottom of my
I'm
heart.
gonna make a pilgrimage to where you live, and I'm gonna cut that gigabit shit until it's as slow as Time Warner. But no, I'm just being salty.
Have a
Okay,
have a nice night.
I'm gonna hit end
Sleep.
stream on